Bocock, and welcome to Between the Covers. David Heska Wanbli Weiden is an enrolled member of the Sicangu Lakota Nation. He's a lawyer, a professor, and the author of a stunning new book, Winter Counts. It's set on the Rosebud Indian Reservation in South Dakota. And let me tell you, it's the best kind of crime fiction because not only is it a compelling page turner, but it's also a book that's going to enlighten and educate you and entertain you all at the same time. It is my pleasure to welcome the author of Winter Counts, David Heska Wanbli Weiden. David, welcome.
It is my pleasure to be here. Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
And I hope I pronounced things almost correctly.
You did it perfectly. Thank you so much.
David, Winter Counts is the story of Virgil Wounded Horse. Now, he is half Lakota. He lives on the Rosebud Reservation. And what he is a local enforcer. And we're talking about vigilante justice. Now, I will give more if you want me to, but I think that's kind of a peek into the story. But for me, the central issue is the broken criminal justice system on our reservations. And then you get into something that I honestly didn't know about, and that is the Major Crimes Act. Can I get you to enlighten us on really everything that I just asked you?
I'd be delighted. So the Major Crimes Act is a law that was passed in 1885, which forbids Native nations from prosecuting crimes that occur on their own lands. Instead, Native nations, reservations, must defer those cases, send them off to the federal authorities. This is a federal law. But here's the thing. Federal authorities, the FBI and the US attorney's offices, are declining to prosecute about 30 to 40% of these cases. That means that violent criminals, offenders, are released without any punishment. And that is where the private justice system comes in. People like my main character, Virgil Wounded Horse, are hired vigilantes. And if someone has had their daughter or their mother hurt or their child, they call, and they can't get justice, they call up somebody like Virgil Wounded Horse who will go out and beat the tar out of someone for a price. And his fee is $100 for each bone he breaks and $100 for each tooth he knocks out. These are real people that do actually exist on reservations.
Thank you for that. And thank you for not giving any more of the story so that people were going to read this book. I am going to have everyone that is watching us now on Facebook, if you have a question, go ahead and put it into the Q&A chat, and we'll see if we can get to those a little later. David, this is a story of Native identity, and it's the betrayal of Native Americans. And I'm going to say right now, I am sorry. I feel guilty for the education that I had because there is so much that I truly was unaware of. So I want to get to the authenticity and your voice writing this book. Your background, your path to writing this, I know that you were an attorney. You are an attorney. You're also a professor. So what was the path to getting to this book?
Well, thank you for that great question. So the path to this book really involved me practicing law for a number of years and then being a professor of Native American Studies here in Denver. And so I've been aware of these issues for a long time. The broken criminal justice system on reservations, our problematic healthcare system, the problems that we have with food distribution, and even our juvenile justice system. All of these issues have been, I sort of like swirling around my head for a long time. And about 10 years ago, I started writing them down and putting them into fictional form. And so I started off with a short story, and then I expanded that short story into the novel Winter Counts. And I am happy to let you know that there will be a second book in the series.
Oh, you know I was going to ask that. Thank you so much. Virgil struggles with his identity because he is half Lakota. He has a lot of skepticism about being Lakota, and identity is a problem. If it's not too personal, was identity also a struggle for you?
Yes, that is another great question. Thank you. So, identity is really the theme of the book. The book is about the criminal justice system, but I think it's also about really Virgil's struggle to come to terms with his identity as an Iesca. In our language, in the Lakota language, Iesca is kind of a slur for the term half breed. It used to mean speaks white or translator, but it now means half breed. And Virgil is struggling to reconcile his place in Indian society as well as his place in non-native society. And of course, this is informed by my own experience. I am an Iesca as well. I am an enrolled citizen of our nation, but I too have struggled with my own place in both worlds, just as Virgil does.
David, I have always felt that crime fiction is the perfect vehicle for social issues. And what's really interesting is that I know how long it takes to write a book, to research it, to have it edited. I mean, this does not happen quickly. The timing of your book release, when we're talking about racial unrest and injustice in this country and the events that we have seen of late, does this book perhaps resonate in ways that even you didn't expect it to?
I think so. Obviously, the Black Lives Matter movement of last summer, I think, opened a lot of eyes throughout the country. And, there's a parallel movement, obviously, with Indigenous people. And so, obviously, I couldn't have predicted that this was going to happen. And of course, I wish it hadn't have happened. But when I started writing the book in 2017, I had no idea that there would be this great social justice movement happening across the land. And so, indeed, I think it has helped gain some awareness and some visibility for the book.
And I was alluding to the fact that how long it takes to write the book. How long did it take you to write this book?
Well, like I said, I started off in a short story that I published way back in 2013. And I thought that I was done with the character of Virgil Wounded Horse because in the short story, he actually dies. I killed him off in the short story. But the character kept speaking to me. There would be times that I'd be driving down the street and I'd think, how would Virgil Wounded Horse react to this or to that? And so over a period of years, it became clear to me that I really did need to expand the short story into a novel. So I started writing the novel in 2017 and then finished 18 different revisions in late 2018.
It's not a fast procedure. There is an interesting relationship in this book between Virgil and his nephew, who is a teenager, Nathan. Now, I don't know how you channeled your inner teenage boy, but I need to know how this character was developed. And was he based on anyone perhaps that you know, or I assume many of the characters are based on people that you know?
The character of Nathan is certainly based upon my own son. So my son, David Jr., is now 16 years old. But when I wrote the book, he was 14, which is exactly how old the character Nathan is in the book. And so I based really the character of Nathan a lot on David Jr., his love of rap music, his sort of teenage surliness. I love my son, but he's deeply in the middle of the teenage years. To a lesser degree, I have another son, Sasha, and he's 13 right now. So he's factors in there a little bit as well. So I was fortunate enough to have two teenage boys running around the house, and that really helped me develop the character of Nathan.
Well, thank you for for David Jr. and Sasha. I want to follow up on Nathan's plot just for a second, because there is a subplot and it deals with heroin, a really serious problem. I'm curious how serious a problem it is on the reservations, and was this something that you had always intended to highlight in the book?
Yes. So, I need to start off, first of all, by stating that there are nearly 600 Native nations in America. And so, my book, I only speak for the Sicangu Lakota people. And so, anything I say here should not necessarily be generalized to all Native nations. On my land, the Rosebud Indian Reservation, heroin is unfortunately becoming a bigger threat. Now, methamphetamine is the really serious drug that has just torn apart our reservation. And I always wanted the book to have a strong anti drug message because I despise that stuff. And so I originally wrote it with meth as the main menace, but then I started getting reports that heroin was trickling into the Rosebud Reservation. And so I did make heroin the centerpiece of the novel.
Interesting. The setting, the landscape are so crucial to this story. And, as a reader, I am visualizing so much in your words. There's a part in the book where, where Virgil and his former girlfriend Marie are driving through the reservation. They're on their way to Denver. And there's a paragraph that's focusing on the negative parts of reservation life. And that's on page 68. And if you don't mind reading that.
I'd be delighted to read this paragraph. This is from Winter Counts. And here it is. 20 songs later, we passed through the desolation of White Clay, Nebraska, just over the state line from South Dakota and the Pine Ridge Reservation. Pine Ridge was dry, so a handful of liquor stores had popped up in White Clay decades ago. The town, population 12, existed solely to support the beer barns that sold booze to the citizens of Pine Ridge right across the border. Of course, every visiting newspaper reporter and TV camera crew had to take shots of the Indians passed out in town by the stores, the bums with their dirty faces and the vomit smeared across their bodies, poverty porn. The camera crews never ventured 100 miles east, where liquor was sold openly on the Rosebud Res. Sure, we had alcoholics. I'd been one of them for a while, but there was far less sensationalism to be filmed or written about on our res. Instead, every TV anchor person, like Diane Sawyer, had to focus on Pine Ridge and the supposedly sad Indians there. There was plenty of sadness on our res as well, but why not cover the good things that were happening at Rosebud and Pine Ridge? All the res artists and musicians, the skateboard parks, the new businesses, and the groups revitalizing Lakota language and culture.
David, that was beautiful, but is that a dig at us, at the media? Are we looking in the wrong places?
Well, the term poverty porn, unfortunately, is a very real thing. And I think sometimes some journalists, not you guys, of course, have tended to focus on the problems that we have on reservations instead of celebrating the wonderful things that are happening. We're revitalizing our language, our culture. So many wonderful things are happening on reservations. And I would just like sometime for a group of media folks to celebrate our resilience, our humor, and our wisdom. And so the book is just that's a little commentary to be like, hey, media, don't just look at the sad stuff, look at the great stuff as well.
I felt that. The scene that follows that is a scene of Carhenge. And yes, it's a replica of Stonehenge, but it's with vintage American cars. And I've seen pictures of it. I've never actually seen it. What is it like?
Carhenge is a very real thing that I describe in the book. In the book, Virgil and his ex-girlfriend Marie are driving to Denver to catch the heroin dealers. And as they're driving, they pull over and they stop at this site where they see all of these 1970s cars on their sides and buried. And it looks like Stonehenge, of course. It is a strange and weird roadside attraction in Alliance, Nebraska. They don't charge any fees to get in. You just come in and you just look at this thing. And in the book, Virgil Wounded Horse has a religious experience while he's looking at the cars. And so Carhenge, if you're ever in Alliance, Nebraska, let me say, you must stop at Carhenge. It is a wonderful thing to see.
And if you can't go there, Google it, because it is unbelievable to see the pictures. We have a question from someone on Facebook who wanted to know how the Rosebud Reservation is being affected by the pandemic. And I'm sure it's not good.
Oh, thank you, whoever submitted that question. What a wonderful question that is. I am sad to report that the Rosebud Reservation is being badly affected by the pandemic. And indeed, on my webpage, my website, I have a link to an organization, the COVID-19 Rosebud Relief Fund. People are free to donate. My people, we don't actually have enough money for masks. And so just getting masks is a great thing. And I can vouch for the charity. Unfortunately, we're getting hit badly by the pandemic for a number of reasons. Housing is scarce on the Rosebud Reservation. You often have a couple of families squeezed into a little trailer. So if somebody gets the disease, the virus, they can't quarantine themselves in a basement or an attic. And so everybody gets it. And so it is just tearing through our reservation, I'm sad to say. Our hospital is full up. So it is a very, very sad time there. And we can all just hope for the best.
I'm so glad you said that and put it in those words. David, you're an enrolled member of the Lakota tribe, and you live really in another world. You're a professor in Denver, but this book is full of such wonders of the beautiful Lakota world, the phrases, first of all, are you fluent? And thank you for sharing these glimpses into the culture, and including spirit names. And can you talk a little bit about what you chose to share in the book about this community with your readers?
Oh, again, thank you so much for that question. So first of all, I am not fluent in the Lakota language, I'm sad to say, and I need to give many thanks to our tribal college, Sicangu Lakota University. They caught me and stopped me from making some really egregious errors. As to what I chose to include, I wanted to give an honest but positive portrayal of the reservation. So I wanted to neither do something that was completely Pollyanna and just said everything is wonderful there, because we have our problems there, just as there are problems in every corner of American society. So I wanted to be honest, but I also felt the need to be positive, and again, not do poverty porn, because I love our reservation. I go back there as much as I can. Growing up, I would spend summers there, and now I take my two boys there. We go to Native spiritual ceremonies every summer, at least we did before the pandemic. So I chose a balanced path to be honest and be accurate, but at the same time, to really show some of the wonderful things and how beautiful life can be on the reservation.
What's the response been from the Native community? And I'm going to just guess that that's the community you really wanted a blessing from.
It is the community that I wanted a blessing from, and I'm so happy to share with you that the response has been completely positive. Every day I get some fan mail or a fan email or a tweet from somebody on the reservation or another Native, and they just say the book is fantastic. They say it's accurate. Probably the most heartfelt moment for me was a young woman, a Lakota woman, took a video of herself holding my book and crying. She said, "Finally, I feel seen. This book, it speaks for us, the Sicangu Lakota people. And I've been waiting my whole life for this book." And so I'll confess that I cried a little too. So I'm just so delighted by the reception among the Native community, the crime fiction community, and really the literary world. I'm just so grateful.
I do want to say that this isn't the only book you've written. You wrote I guess it's middle school, for middle school kids. It's called Spotted Tail, and it's about a famous Lakota warrior, a leader. Tell me a little bit about why you wrote this book, but I'm looking at both of these books as a call to action. Can I say that?
Well, thank you for mentioning Spotted Tail. Spotted Tail was really a labor of love for me. Spotted Tail is the story of our great chief, Spotted Tail. It is a picture book. I would say it's more for ages 6 to 10. And it is the story of Spotted Tail because we didn't have any books for young children from the Sicangu Lakota Nation. We have picture books about Geronimo and Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull, but none about Spotted Tail. So the wonderful publisher Raycraft Books asked me if I would be willing to write one, and I said certainly. And I should note that I've donated the proceeds from the book to the reservations. I've given free copies to every school and library on all of the Lakota reservations, and I just want kids to read it. So it's the story of our great leader Spotted Tail, his trials and his tribulations.
May I say that the artwork in the book is magnificent as well. We did have someone on Facebook who said that while they were reading the book, they felt that they were on the Rosebud Reservation. I think that's great praise. So I'm sure you like that. There is a minor character in the book who's a chef. Now, his significance to he does have a significance to the storyline, but there's also a deeper thing with the food and the health situation on the reservation. And can you talk a little bit about that, about food insecurity, and really healthy food?
Yes, I am delighted to talk about that. The character in the book that you're referring to is Chef Lax Strongbow. So he's a fictional celebrity chef who comes to the reservation and starts telling everybody that they need to return to traditional indigenous foods. Now, I introduced the character of Lax Strongbow because I wanted to highlight the problems that we have on reservations with what we call food sovereignty. It is very difficult to get healthy food on reservations. Sometimes the only place to get food for miles around is one of these little corner stores. And so, healthy, cheap, affordable foods and sustainable foods, it's not easy to come by. And this contributes to some of the terrible health outcomes that we have on reservations. On my reservation, the average life expectancy for a man is 47 years old. That's 30 years younger than somebody off the reservation. This is due partly because of the food insecurity problem, the healthcare problems that we have. And so I wanted to bring in a character to sort of highlight this and let people know that getting decent and healthy food on reservations is a problem and something that we need to work towards.
I have one quick question left because I just want you to set me straight. There is a quick scene with Virgil and a white shopkeeper, and I believe they are in a marijuana dispensary. And Virgil is asking about seeing a quote, Indian. And the white shopkeeper is correcting him in a PC manner and saying, oh, I assume you mean Native American. So are you saying that we're trying too hard? What is that?
So that was a funny scene to write. In the book, I have, as I mentioned before, the characters Virgil and Marie come to Denver, where I live, and Denver is my hometown. And so I wanted to write a little bit about Denver and how it's changed over the years. And obviously, we legalized cannabis here some years ago. So they visit a dispensary. They've never seen anything like it. And the shopkeeper is very pompous. And Virgil says, well, I'm Indian. And the shopkeeper, who's not native, says, well, I believe you mean Native American. And, so I kind of brought that in because the terms that we use, natives often, at least in my nation, we don't mind the term Indian, okay? But I know that some nations don't care for it. And so, really all of the terms are okay, but we generally don't use the term Native American among ourselves. We call each other natives or Indians. And so it was just kind of a commentary on this shopkeeper presuming to tell a native person how he himself should be referred to.
It was a light moment in the book, and I enjoyed that passage. Tell us what the significance of the title Winter Counts is.
So winter counts, it is the calendar system that was traditionally used by Lakota people. A winter count back in the day, hundreds of years ago, used little pictographs and pictures, maybe drawn on a buffalo hide or something like that. And the most significant event of the year would be drawn on the hide, and that would be the year of this or that. I mean, if we were to do a winter count for the year last year, 2020, it would certainly be the year of the pandemic, and maybe there'd be a little pictograph of all of us gathered in front of our computer screens on Zoom, you know. And so winter counts refers to the traditional Lakota calendar system, but obviously it has a double meaning. Winter is a very tough time for many natives, and especially the Lakota people. It gets very cold in South Dakota, often 20 below zero, and we've had people freeze to death there if they can't afford their propane deliveries. And so I wanted to use the title again to illustrate this double meaning.
The book is Winter Counts. The children's book is Spotted Tail. David Heska Wanbli Weiden, thank you so much for joining us today.
It has been my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm Ann Bocock. Please connect with us and join me on the next Between the Covers.